I want to tell you a story about the discovery of a new planet. It's about a unique sphere deep in the vastness of space. Its light spiking from the abyss as it swings round its star, orbiting its lifeline with a perfected arc. The glory of the discovery vibrates through the society, hope being the main theme, as the most knowledgeable look to the new planet for answers and resource. As an advanced civilization with bases on their closest surrounding moons and planets, they thought they had everything they needed. Well, apart from enough gold required for their futuristic technologies. It turns out that gold was an essential element in their power systems and hypersonic craft. In fact, because of gold's resourcefulness, it had become cemented as the economic foundation to this planet. If one had gold, then they had everything. And with the discovery of this new planet far away, maybe gold was on the menu. They sent out their drones like a pack of flies, loaded with technology to detect anything their so curious planet required. The news shot round faster than light. The planet held life. Videos circulated of these exotic aliens, life forms adapted to their environments with unpredictable creativity. The newly discovered celestial body was named Planet H-Tray. The range of species was incredible. Some moved in ways never seen before. Some had camouflage so they matched their surroundings. But there was one animal which captured the attention of the scientists more than any other. There was a bipedal, humanoid-like creature covered in fur. It would eat a mixture of other animals and forest plants. They seemed to be the most intelligent species, as they would use things they found as tools, and they seemed to engage somewhat socially with each other. Comparing Planet H-Tray's most intelligent aliens with their own, it was obvious that they were many years behind in terms of intellect. Those who were excited about the possibility of new, clever neighbors were disappointed, but some top scientists and leaders saw a rare opportunity. Whilst the socially tuned were debating the life forms, the resource-minded had discovered massive amounts of gold hidden beneath the feet of these new beings. As their best minds explored possibilities to extract the gold, they considered the many challenges. The metal was distributed all across the planet in very small chunks, and there didn't seem to be an automatic mass extraction method like they had explored on another planet to extract gas through terraforming. One sneaky voice suggested a complicated but maybe achievable strategy. Instead of terraforming the planet and extracting what we need, how about we reform the planetary life so they gather it for us? In the same way that a beekeeper might keep a hive to collect their honey, the bees are happy doing what they do. And when the nectar is harvested, the bees are none the wiser and just continue to collect more. The idea gained consensus as the researchers explored the psychology of this new planet's most advanced specimen. Hacking the survival instincts of these aliens seemed like the best way to change their behavior. Where there is a need to survive, there is ego. Ego can be a disruptive force, but also a useful one, they pondered. The first step was to increase the being's sense of self through advanced genealogical efforts and years of secretive eugenics. The population of these aliens grew more self-aware, and their use of tools was shaped into materialism. In the same way artificially adapted queen bees could be used to influence hive behavior, a similar method was used on the H-Trayans. Bionic robots were used to impersonate, provide leadership, and help shape the direction of the being's development. The push towards individualism and egoistic ways of thinking definitely instilled a sense of ownership and materialism in the beings. But with this change came a violent exhaust. As the beings started to explore with their newly curious sense of proprietorship, they evolved into primitive hunter-gatherer tribes. Foraging for resource, they now had a deep desire to win, whatever that meant. Collecting things became central to their existence, just as planned. Their nomadic style soon adapted to more permanent settlements, as their desire for storage and security increased. The beings traveling across their globe had slowly grown out of their old aesthetics. Their amount of fur reduced, as fire and shelters removed the evolutionary need for year-round coats. Larger tribes and communities formed, parallel to a growing amount of violent battles for territory and honor. Hierarchies naturally grew, and those most suited to gathering power and resource rose to the top. Managing and preventing war was at first extremely challenging, as the newly evolved minds of these beings were unconsciously battling for structure. If only the beings would be more interested in gathering gold than fighting, the scientists pondered. Again, artificial H-trains were sent to realign the project. Trade had started to begin within communities as they shuffled around belongings in accordance with what they needed. Food for weapons, work animals for protection. The great move to markets was on track. The accelerating use of trade catalyzed the need for currency, as it was impractical for the H-trains to bring all their belongings to the newly forming market squares. Over time, consistent food sources became the first currency, but as the seasons cycled, its practicality as currency dwindled. With their new need for power and status, rare gleaming objects became a symbol of success, which satisfied some deep internal requirement. The most powerful members of the communities would wear the most extravagant displays of wealth. The most valuable things slowly shifted away from more immediately practical items like food and clothing, towards items which portrayed power. And one specific natural element grew to be the most desired of all, and that shiny material was gold. Rejoicing scientists partied as their busy bees adopted gold as their most sacred resource. Never had a plan worked so well. The gold-thirsty H-trains began wide-ranging extraction of rare metals and gold. Innovations in smelting due to the gold rush created even stronger weapons and buildings. Society continued its trajectory, advancing its technology, whilst dealing with incomparable war and death. Unpredictably, the wars created a higher need for resource and gold. This only accelerated the extraction, which gave the scientists justification to let the wars run wild. Storing one's possessions safely became central to H-trains' existence. Their gold piles continued to mount, whilst thieves and wars pillaged. In a way, gold started to be re-hidden, as those with the most strove to preserve wealth and power. It was decided that the great extraction process must begin at once. Artificial H-trains were sent to set up services promising safeguarding of assets and gold. They would keep a safeguard of your gold and in turn give you an IOU note which could be redeemed for their gold at any point. The scientists had banked on banking, and it worked. Over many years, the financial industries flourished and an ever-increasing supply of gold accumulated in centralized places called banks. Things became even more centralized as national and then global banks took the reins. The beings were happily using the IOU notes instead, as it was way more convenient than gold. As the remaining findable gold dwindled, wars and violence continued. Piles of gold grew at the banks, and the paper substitutes grew in the pockets of the populace. As parts of the earth fell into the daily cycle of night, crafts would extract the gold, staying on the dark side of the earth, doing runs to large collection crafts waiting in orbit. The economy continued to spiral as the H-trains kept printing more notes for their spending sprees. Those with assets and land gained monumental power, as those struggling to make ends meet were in an unwinnable race against inflation. The gold was a welcome gift to the conquering planet. Their profiting scheme worked perfectly, and they now had more gold than they needed. The new planet was mostly left to its own devices, apart from some infrequent research missions to study the being's development, as the newly conscious minds struggled to find order and understanding. By this time, Some well-resourced H-Trains began to notice the unusual signs of these higher beings and their influence. A malfunction with one of the craft in a large, developed nation resulted in the H-Trains obtaining a craft and its bionic, robotic pilots. Following this incident, secret contact was made with the highest officials within the large nation. An agreement was put in place where their activities would be kept secret in return for technology and advanced knowledge. To the H-Trains, this knowledge contained more value than any physical item. It would make the beholders unimaginably rich and powerful. Their innate selfish need for power left them blind to one small stipulation. The H-Train nation would allow a few of its citizens to be abducted for testing each month. From the seeds of this knowledge, the powerful H-Trains developed their own crafts and advanced technologies. The struggling public would see glimpses of these craft. Thus, rumors and conspiracy grew wild. As the economic power divide grew, so did the citizens' lack of patience towards their elite. The planet fell into a worldwide riot as the H-Trains battled their own overlords for freedom and fairness. This violence escalated out of control into complete turmoil, forcing the advanced planet to consider re-intervening to try to calm matters. There was no way for them to seize control of the situation from behind a veil. If they stepped in to help, their cover would be blown. Some tried to sell the idea of destroying the planet as a quick way to remove the headache, but this was shot down by the very same department that had been abducting and testing on the H-Trains for years. Whilst many were blinded by the gold and the challenges the extraction brought, some researchers had noticed some special qualities that these beings held that had been mostly unexplored. They were bundles of immense creativity and possessed an intuitive sense for art. The more advanced creatures had never seen anything like this before. The H-Trains had created huge communities around many different beautiful things, like dancing, drawing, and singing. These activities had never been consciously perceived on the original advanced planet, and it was mind-blowing to them. Once everyone back home found out about these different creative activities, it bolted through their society, spreading a new cultural wave. Many would start to look at H-Trains as a source of creative inspiration. Laughter as a concept was bewildering. It seemed to them like some weird evolutionary quirk, but once their society started experimenting with the concept of laughter, it began to find its place in their communication. It provided them further ways to express themselves, which ultimately the society saw as a benefit. Their own world held a gargantuan cultural shift away from hoarding materials and developing technology, and towards more creative pursuits like spreading laughter, goosebumps, and creativity. Instead of annihilating H-Tray and forgetting the headache, they decided to intervene and finally reveal the truth. Once the reality was revealed, the H-Trains and the beings placed an unshakable end to all their battles and differences. The H-Trains basked in their newly achieved peace and understanding. Without knowing it, the H-Trains had developed something more valuable than gold, and it was their love for art and laughter which ultimately changed the theme of the universe. Harmony and unequivocal peace became the conquering force. They came for gold, but stayed for art. The end.